Good morning and welcome to The Mix, the show where two pastors talk about a little bit of everything. I kind of noticed we have some clothing differences here
Yeah, we have a
today.
little disparity. This is kind of your dress up and my dress up.
Yeah. So we have the formal attire, and then we have the right after this podcast, I'm going to go fight people attire. So
Yeah, well,
nice
I'm
stuff.
gonna go and bury someone after this.
Oh, so you're just going past the fighting all the way to that. All right,
No.
wow.
No, I have a funeral for a veteran.
Gotcha.
So
It's good to
Podcast
know that we
first.
can just kind of differ in some of those ways. But a really good show for you today, talking about a lot of good things that you guys have asked questions about. And this one is actually one of the questions that was in the bag that we thought we should probably do a whole episode on this one. So that'll be exciting. But before we jump into that, we're going to start off with the morning mix and talk about Mother's Day. Now, Mother's Day is a week from today. And I know a lot of people do some things for Mother's Day. So the question today is, what is one of the funniest or the best things that you've ever done for Mother's Day or that your kids have done for your wife?
well, it's probably one of those holidays that's created by Hallmark, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Just sell more cards, flowers, that kind of stuff. No, I'm joking. I'm not really feeling that way. Maybe Valentine's Day is that way if something probably.
Oh,
yeah. But definitely like Father's Day, like in my house growing up, we celebrated like Mother's Day, Father's Day, and even Children's Sunday was a thing, right? So something very special in acknowledging that that's a huge part of society.
Mm-hmm.
And I think mothers still have a pretty central role in society. And so I think if people celebrate one of the two, they tend to kind of skew more towards Mother's Day. But as far as like for me, Mother's Day, my mom is always like she's got some greenhouses. She's sold flowers even before she retired from teaching at school. She's not doing quite as much of that now. You know, my folks are in their 70s. But yeah, I always try to get her some kind of a flower that she can enjoy all summer.
Okay.
And
To plant or is it something you put in a vase?
Usually I go and get a large basket of something that she's not growing.
Gotcha.
Like a lot of times I get her petunias because she not petunias, what are the ones that have hummingbirds?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know
know.
flowers.
Fuchsias, that's what it is. So I get her fuchsia, but she's got a bunch of fuchsias already growing in the greenhouse. So I'll get her something different this year. But I try to find something that's creative and neat, and she really enjoys that all summer. So that's what I do for my mom.
It's crazy.
In a visit.
We're like polar opposites when it comes to family. Because in my family, we're very sarcastic. We like to tease each other. And it does not get accepted. There's no exemption on Mother's Day either. Probably the best one that I've done. My mom has this cedar chest that is loaded to the brim with, you know, our childhood drawings and memories and stuff.
Sure, memory chest.
And one of the things that she put in there was a Mother's Day card that I got for her. And it was this really nice, like, 50s mom on the front. And it said, what can you get your mom for Mother's Day? And so it talks, you open the card, it's actually one of those electronic cards. And it talks about...
Like the singing ones or they speak or something?
Well, it's not where it records the message. It's where there's a message on it already. And there's this kind of nice jingle in the background like you're on the Shoppers Network. And it says, have you ever tried to get your kids to do something, but you haven't gotten it done? It says, why not try guilt? Guilt is the number one tool every mother can use. And it has this whole example of...
So this is what you got her for the gift.
Yeah,
That's
oh,
it.
absolutely.
That
and
was the gift.
I think we went out to dinner and stuff too, but
That's funny.
that right there...
Your family is indeed strange.
We are. We have to try to live up to the name, and I think we do so.
That's fun, though. That's really fun.
Well, that's how we show love in our family. If we're not being sarcastic, something might actually be wrong.
Yeah.
And to be fair, she is one woman in a family of all boys.
Yeah.
My father and then the three of us.
Yeah, she's had a rough life.
Oh, and how. And how. What are some things that you've done for your mother on Mother's Day? Comment in the sections below, and feel free to share with us in person. We'd love to hear about it. And make sure this coming Mother's Day, make sure your mother feels loved. They go through a lot. They're the reason why you're here. So celebrate your mother. We're canceling youth and everything, so celebrate your mother. It's a good day to do it.
Amen.
Now, going to the main mix today, we are talking about, someone asked a question about Bible translations. There's like 50 of them, even more probably.
Sure.
What Bible translation, I mean, what's the difference between them? Is there one that's better than the other? Are there ones that we should stay away from? if I'm looking for a Bible, what should I get? Where should I go? I know that's a loaded question, but they want to know.
Well, yeah, these are I get asked this question a lot. I especially got asked this question when I changed over what I was preaching and teaching out of. I don't know how many years back, 4 or 5 years now at least. I liked the NIV 84. I thought it was a really good kind of what we call dynamic equivalent, kind of meaning for meaning type thing.
Right.
Maybe thought for thought. We're going to put a chart up so you guys can kind of see.
Yeah, why don't we put the chart up right below right now?
And so if you look at that chart, you can see it kind of spans all the way over from what we call literal translations, word for word, where you're basically even sometimes they read rather, I'll say clunky or wooden is the term we use, where like the order of the words hasn't even been rearranged. You try to keep the original word, even if it's a strange or a difficult one that might have been an easier English equivalent. They'll try to stick with that formal word that's used. Then you kind of go meaning for meaning ideas. These are in thought for thoughts in the middle of that. That's what we call generally dynamic equivalents fall within that. And those are basically spanning from what would be the closest approximation or what would work best to describe what's happening in this.
Yes.
And then all of these three generally have translation committees that are part of that. So you've got a bunch of really sharp guys or girls, people that are really solid in biblical languages and history and historical usage of them, and cultural application, all that stuff. And they're kind of really wrestling together with those. And then you get over to paraphrases, and it says here retelling. That's not a bad idea. It's basically most of not all, but a lot of the paraphrases either have more what I'll call a cultural committee, or even a lot of, a fair number of them have like even a singular translator. And they're basically saying, I'm just going to say it in my own words kind of thing. And so like the message is on the list. I always joke with people that if you keep looking in there, you might find a recipe for chocolate chip cookies or
absolutely,
something.
Absolutely.
So instead of Jesus breaking bread, he's like, hey, you have a slice of pizza.
Some Mountain Dew to wash it down, yeah.
Well, maybe not that far, but yeah. So this is kind of, as you look at that chart, that's kind of what you see there. So the challenge in front of people is broad because you've got several different things. I'm always hesitant to tell people, like, this is the only thing you could use. The only people that really do that are the King James only people because they believe that that's the only version that's been preserved, unaltered, throughout history. That's a false narrative.
Right.
And I'll say that. There's plenty of great debates out there. James White has a couple really great debates on King James only. He's a really sharp Greek scholar and biblical history scholar. But anyway, most people have their preferred version. Like my grandmother, grew up learning King James. I grew up, learning some of the King James, and then the NIV. The 84 NIV I thought was a really useful and widely used dynamic equivalent. It was probably the quintessential translation that people used.
Yeah, for the most part.
Other than the NASB and King James or New King James for a long time. But there's some new kids on the block. I have really enjoyed using the ESV, the English Standard Version. I think it's a fairly readable, not quite as clunky or wooden as the NASB was, and so the language is a little better, but it preserves a lot of the integrity of the word for word. And so, two things to take into account. I asked my class, I asked my professors, my Bible professors, and even my Greek and Hebrew scholar professors. I said, "What's the best translation to use?" And this is what he said. He said the best translation to use is the one you'll read. And I thought, well, it seems like a cop-out answer, but really the whole point is that you would be in the Word of God, right? So how do you know what's the good version for you to use? There's two things that I think people should think about. Number one, you should think about things you read and enjoy reading, like maybe reading level is here, but just comfortable in reading. So I recommend books sometimes. Like I like some classic books, like authors Tozer, Bonhoeffer, now and people, Spurgeon, whoever. But if you go back and read some of that stuff, like I gave somebody the knowledge of the holy, knowing God, J.A. Packer, gave that to somebody, and they read one chapter in it that we were studying, and they came back and they're like, I don't know how you read this stuff. I mean, this is a very intelligent, college-educated person, you know?
Right.
And they're just like, it's just such a language barrier. So I don't want that kind of language barrier. To someone like that, I might say, hey, you know what? Something else that's more in that dynamic equivalent range might be something that's a little bit better for you to use on a personal level of reading. But then the second thing is there's two ways that people should read the Bible. One is the longer content, just reading for content. Like we're going to do a summer thing over this summer, call it our summer Bible reading program. And if you participate in it, you're going to read 2 chapters a day. And by the time you get to the end of the summer, you'll have read through the entire New Testament. Okay. So that's what we're trying to have people do. But I wouldn't recommend if language is going to be a real issue for someone to try to slog through maybe an ESV that's really hard for them. Instead, I might have them try, a version that maybe they're more comfortable with, maybe something that's more readable like an NLT or something like that.
So here's some of the questions that I've had people come up and ask me. So first off, on this scale, would you say that there are translations on both sides that going past it would be a little difficult? So the literal translation, you can get even more literal, but it might be over someone's head. And then on the other side, if you go past a certain translation, maybe they're taking a little too much creative liberties to where you kind of lose the meaning of the Bible.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's the fear of everybody. They want to be able to trust what's in their hands, right? And I would say, generally speaking, like on the list that's up there, if you stay from the NLT is probably about the farthest that I would like to go on that list of saying to someone, if you read that all the time, then okay. But yeah, when I study, that's why I prefer a more literal translation when I'm studying or teaching, because I want to be as close to the original text as possible. Obviously, I'm not expecting that everybody, we've got a couple people that may, have a side-by-side Greek Testament or something when we're in school, or in church. But yeah, most people aren't trying to do any of that work. I'm not able to just open a Greek Testament and just like, oh yeah, I can read this easily.
Right.
So that's just not true. And I don't expect it to be true. So trust the work of those committees, those really sharp people who have done the hard work of putting it in English for us.
Right. You know what? The youth group and I were actually going through a series by the Bible Project, which is a fantastic resource if you're starting out in the Bible and want to know a little bit more. And we're going through the part of these different translations and how we look at the Bible through a Western American perspective. And we lose the understanding that this was written in an Eastern, ancient Jewish perspective. Yep. And sometimes the translation can not lead astray, but it can kind of lose some of its essence if you take a little too much liberty in the translation. So,
well, I'll say that's true of anything, including a literal.
Right.
So remember, you're reading in English, and you're not getting the benefit of cultural application. So if you want a good study Bible, that's one of the reasons I like the ESV is it has a good study Bible that they've put out, and I think that some of the scholarship in that is pretty sharp. So
let's say I was just starting out on this. I just received Christ in my heart, and I'm starting this journey. What would you recommend someone to start out with? Just your opinion, not that any others are bad necessarily, but just your opinion. What would you ask them to start out? What would you recommend them switch to at what point? And then what translation would you say would be a good one to kind of end on as you continuously read?
Well, so if you look at our Next Steps model, or I think somewhere in one of those discipleship guides that we have online, we talk about that a little bit. I recommend to a lot of new believers for the first 2 years, I really like the Life Application Study Bible. I've had a couple of them. It's more readable, and I think that the whole idea of that study Bible, the Life Application, is that it takes the text and then it helps you to ask the questions that would apply the text to your life the way that you want to read. So it kind of abridges the study. It does basically walks past all the cultural stuff and just says, okay, like, now what should you do about what you've just read?
What does this have to do with me today?
Yeah,
kind of a thing.
and so it really does a great job of applying that. And so it helps people to make that connection. Oh, when I read the Bible, there's actually something in here that should change the way I live. So a friend of mine says we don't read the Bible to finish, we read the Bible to change. So I think the Life Application Bible, if I could recommend one, would definitely be the number one that I would recommend on that list. Mm-hmm. And then as you go through that and you kind of get that process underway, then I'm saying, okay, let's dig into a little bit more of the historical work and maybe some of the theological work, cultural work, and the ESV Study Bible is what I recommend for that. There's other ones out there that are great, but those are the two that I use and recommend.
Right. And I know that on this journey, there's never going to be a point where you read the Bible and you have complete understanding of everything that's going on. It's called the living word for a reason. It's a lifetime trial where you read it over and over and over again, and you can read the same passage 5 years in a row and find new meaning in it in the sixth year, a meaning that you couldn't see clearly.
Well, I think there's two reasons for that. One, the Bible talks about the Holy Spirit helping us, and Jesus talks about that. The Holy Spirit will guide us in the truth, right? But there's also another premise that's true of us as humans, as I like to say, we leak. Mm-hmm. So, like, we don't retain everything. As we get older, we forget things, or maybe it just slips to the back of our mind, and those refreshers, all of a sudden, it's like you see it in a new light, and now you see it in light of the new experiences that have brought that to the surface. And so there's a personal, and then there's a spiritual reason why rereading text is a really great thing. Same thing as when you reread a book or reread a movie. You start to notice some of the finer details that maybe before you hadn't noticed in it. And it makes the movie perhaps more meaningful, or that moment a little bit more poignant.
Right, yeah. Right. Going through the journey, you kind of begin to pick up something called inductive Bible study methods, where you're able to see clearer what the original authors were intending in the passages that they were writing.
I think that'll probably happen.
It gets to help out.
Yeah.
So what version do you read? We would like to know if you guys have more questions about different versions of the Bible. If you ask about, is this version an okay version, please send us in the comments. We would love to answer those questions for you. There are definitely some Bibles out there that are a little more like a comic, I guess, than a...
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a
fairy tale
thing out there.
Yeah. And I know there's also different questions you guys might have about the Bible that the Wesleyan Jews and the Wesleyan Church versus maybe the Greek Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church. That's a question maybe for another time, but send us in your questions. We would love to answer them. And now we are going to start the mixed bag, and I'm going to do a little magic today. You guys like magic? Okay. So I'm going to reach in, and I'm going to pull out, the magic of television. So our mixed bag today, we actually have questions that are texted in. Oh, dear. So these were given to us by some of our teens. I'm going to need some translation on some of this. So one of the questions is, who between us had more Riz? Could we, camera guy, can you again define Riz, please, for us? Charisma. Okay.
It's like game.
Okay. Game.
This is a funny thing. So this someone in my household who I may be married to has an app where they send, or it's an email, and every week they send email of cultural definitions and words that are being used and to find them. And so we're like, what is that one again? And then we ask, our only remaining child who lives at home. Well, we have more children who remain here, but the only one that still is at home. I want to make sure I say that right. And so we'll ask her, and we're like, what does that mean? She's like, well, yeah, that's kind of what it means. And then she's like, wait, why are you asking me this question? Because we have this email with all these things. And she's just like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
So this email is not just like random
dictionary. You just subscribe to it. It's all like cultural slang that's being used and trying to help you kind of stay in a conversation with younger people.
So kind of an urban dictionary thing.
Yeah, essentially emailed on a weekly basis to parents. Recommend. It's fun.
I mean,
it's ridiculous.
I guess to answer this question, I mean, as far as charisma goes, I know how to be romantic. I'm not going to share all the things that I've done, but the first date that I ever had with my wife, I was in Indiana in college, and she was in New York at college, and we decided we were going to have a Skype date.
I was going to say, that's the kind of date she was looking for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's right. Well, she was warned before we got married. My parents, everybody, they said on our wedding day, they said, this is it, last chance. So, but she's stuck now.
She picked you.
But I remember I wanted everything to be perfect, so I ordered a pizza from her pizza place near her college and had it delivered to her room, and I paid for it and everything. And then I got pizza from my place, and then we sat down and we had pizza together, and it was kind of a neat little thing.
That's a creative idea.
Yeah, no.
Did you put any like messages in the pizza?
No.
Pepperoni or
I
that
was
nonsense?
sending a Vermont teddy bear to her, which
Okay.
is,
I'm lost here.
it's just a fancy teddy bear. I didn't know what it
Okay.
was either, but you know, do I have game? Like, do we have?
He's
Sure,
got a whole collection of them.
sure. Oh yeah, you know. But I mean, I guess it's a hard question to think about because now, I mean, you know, the only charisma I want to have is for my wife, and that's about it.
That's true.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't know. Our story of meeting is kind of funny because, like, I knew her cousins and stuff. We played basketball together and fishing and stuff like that. Hung out. We were friends. And then we were having like friend Sundays, you know, type of thing over the summer. Her family came to church and walked in, and I remember where I was standing in this little church where I grew up, and I saw her walk in, and I remember saying to the person, "Excuse me, but I think I need to go and speak to someone." And I didn't know her from anybody, and I just walked up to her and said, "Hey, it's really great to have you in church. What's your name?" I'm Doug, and we hit off a friendship and kind of started from there.
okay.
So it's kind of I don't know if that qualifies as charisma, but I did the Christian thing. Welcome to the church, you know.
The next question. This is one I think all of us want to know. What hair products would you recommend?
I recommend wax.
Wax.
You definitely like a good sheen. That's a really important question.
Is it because of ministry that wax is the answer instead of shampoo and conditioner, or is that?
Well, I think it just gives you a nice, clean, you know, really reflective look, kind of like the Shekinah glory. You know, these are questions that I have received for many years, dating back to my
To be fair,
youth
you
ministry.
can
days.
pull it off.
Oh, there's not everybody that can do that.
No, I couldn't. Luckily, I'm just going gray instead of losing hair.
Yeah,
but-
I'm doing a little both. It's a contest to see whether they leave the building or turn gray first. But yeah, just remember, there is a story in the Bible, you know, where some youths
Well, yeah.
were picking on a prophet who
Oh,
was
yeah.
going bald, and God exacted some revenge with bears. So there is that.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. This is a pretty good question. What was the best experience you had in bringing someone to Christ?
Oh man,
It's a hard one because biblically, every time a person comes to Christ, there's a huge celebration that's thrown for them. And I mean, you have people that, there's lots of experiences where you randomly brought someone to Christ through a random encounter led by the Holy Spirit. There's also ones that are intentional where you've worked with people and then through years
Sure.
of working with it,
yeah,
have brought them to Christ. It's hard to compare one is better than the other.
yeah. I would say probably two come to the forefront for me. One is like with my own kids, like talking with them about the gospel and those kind of things. That's obviously particularly special. Baptizing them, particularly special. That kind of stuff. But Tara and I have some good friends that I've had the privilege of leading both of them to Christ. And they're some of our best friends. In fact, we're going out to dinner tonight. So just really, really fun to see how God works in people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to say, honestly, some of the best experiences that I had was actually when I was a teen. A lot of people think that, you know, you grow up to be the church. What they don't realize is you're part of the church regardless. And, you know, I remember a lot of positive memories in my youth group days. I was in a youth group in Alabama, and just inviting them, just hanging out with them, getting them excited for the things I was excited about. It was a really neat experience to turn that from relationship into interest and curiosity into actual change. Really powerful moment.
Yeah,
of
life change.
working
Beautiful to see.
through.
Well, fun.
What are some places where you guys have had an opportunity to share Christ with others? We would love to hear it. They're always celebrated, whether we know you or not. I mean, we're not talking about just New Hope. We're not talking about the Wesleyan Church. We're talking about the church in general, the Church United. And we would love to hear about some of the stories of how you brought someone to Christ or how you were brought to Christ. So share in the comments below. Share with us in person. We would love to hear about it. But I think we are out of time today.
I do believe we expired the clock.
So I'm going to say that's all we have for today. So please share a comment, and we will see you guys next time on The Mix. Have a good one.